Hi, I'm Sir Raven Jard Castañeda. I'm co-founder and president of the Association of Catholic Apologists Knights of St. Justin Martyr. And in our last abortion video, we discussed how we can prove that the unborn are alive, whole, and human organisms. But there are pro-choice, pro-abortion people, some, if not most, although they would admit that the unborn are at least individual members of the human species, biologically speaking. These people would say that not every individual member of our species deserve the same basic rights. That is, unborn children do not have a right to life because the unborn are different from born humans. What they really mean is that while born humans or persons, they would claim that unborn humans aren't. So in this video, we're going to learn how to address that. Today we're going to answer the following questions. Number one, what is a person? And number two, are the difference between born and unborn humans sufficient reason to say that the unborn are not really human persons? But before we answer those, it is important to note that most pro-choice, pro-abortion people would say that rights are grounded in personhood. That is, you have rights because you are a person. But just a tangent from the main part of this lecture. Yes, I would agree with the idea that humans have rights because they are persons. But it's weird for me that there are some pro-choice, pro-abortion people who would also be so heavy about animal rights while saying that the unborn doesn't really have equal rights as to the born humans. They are even against the killing of unborn animals, but are fine with killing unborn humans. But well, right now there are even discussions on whether trees and rivers should have the same legal rights as human beings. It's just weird how species hating this self-loving world we have right now. Anyway, I would just like to emphasize that at least in the case of humans, some pro-choice, pro-abortion people would say that not all human beings have equal rights because rights are to be attributed to persons and unborn humans are not persons. So let's start with the first one. What is a person? We all agree that every human person we meet is unique. That is, we all differ in size, intelligence, skin color, gender, physical ability, etc. But regardless of those wide variety or differences in different properties, you always must ground human equality in the very thing that is really and truly equal about us all, and that is our human nature. The properties that I mentioned earlier are properties that come in degrees. In terms of size, you can be small or big, tall or short. In terms of intelligence, you can be smart or not so smart, or a genius. In terms of skin color, your skin may have high melanin content or low melanin content, but we all agree that people with difference in size or intelligence or melanin content in the skin all have equal rights. It doesn't matter if you have varying degrees of those properties that I've mentioned earlier. The fact is that every one of us, regardless of our differences, have equal rights in the basis that we are all human persons. Even pro-choice philosophers like Jeff McMahon say that the idea that a person's right to life depend on a property that comes in degrees, quote, rests on distressingly insecure foundations, close quote. Well, this is because it goes against our principle that all human beings have equal rights. Where do we ground a person's right then? Perhaps it is better to ground our rights, which we either have or don't have, to a property that does not come in degrees. It's either you have it or do not have it. This is Aristotle's law of excluded middle, by the way. That is, you can either have this or does not have this. There's no varying degrees of having and not having in between. In this case, one can be a member of a rational kind or not be a member of a rational kind. And the 6th century philosopher Boethius says that a person is an individual substance with a rational nature. That is, a particular being can only be a person if it is a member of a rational kind. In this case, a human being cannot be 50% member of the rational kind, that is the human kind, and 50% member of a non-rational kind. It has to be you're a member or you're not a member. And at any stage in our life, at any stage in our existence, even if we aren't able to function rationally, like when we are still in our infancy stage, we cannot really think rationally if we are infants, we are still members of a kind that deserves respect and equal protection under the law. That is, we are still member of the humankind even if we are infants. That is why we call ourselves human infants, right? So we call ourselves, even if you're unborn, we call those unborn children as human fetus or human embryo. And since we remain always as members of the humankind for our entire existence, then throughout every stage in our existence, it doesn't matter what age you are, if you're old, if you're young, if you're unborn or born, we maintain that we deserve the respect and protection that all humans normally receive. Basically, all humans are members of a rational kind. Since a person is defined as an individual substance of a rational nature, as Boethius says, it follows then that all humans are also persons regardless of in what stage that particular human is in his existence. This is so because throughout their entire existence, they always maintain their membership of that valuable kind, which is the humankind. For instance, an old human cannot cease from being a human person just because he is old, nor can a dead man lose his personhood simply because he is dead. So the question then becomes, are there differences between the unborn on one hand and born humans on the other that is sufficient to justify the idea that the unborn are not persons with a right to life? A philosopher by the name of Stephen Schwartz argued that there are only 4 differences between born and unborn humans. And Schwartz maintained that none of these differences, and not even all of them together, can justify depriving unborn humans the right to life. What are these 4 differences? Number 1, size. Number 2, level of development. Number 3, environment. And lastly, the degree of dependency. So let's take a look at the first one, size. One of the most prominent, if not the most prominent atheist of our time is the evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins. And Dawkins, a pro-choice person, says that, quote, a certain kind of religious mind cannot see the moral difference between killing a microscopic cluster of cells on the one hand and killing a fully grown doctor on the other, close quote. Okay, just a tangent. As a biology major, I'm a second-year biology student right now. I highly respect Dawkins for his work in biology, specifically evolutionary biology, but Richard Dawkins shouldn't act like an authority to me or to anyone in that case on moral differences because he's not a philosopher of ethics, nor is he a moral theologian. His science as a biologist can only assume the truth of a scientific fact, but in itself, it is blind to the moral dimension of things. Sure, science can inform the field of morality and ethics, but it cannot in any way replace it. And the same is true for the experts in those fields. Biologists like Dawkins cannot and should not replace moral theologians or philosophers of ethics. And for us ordinary people, let's stop accepting everything scientists say without question. They are not the fount of all wisdom. Anyway, Dawkins seems to say that it is wrong to kill a full-grown doctor but not an embryo because the doctor is so much larger than the embryo in terms of size. Well, even pro-lifers would say that it is wrong to kill an abortion provider no matter how big or small that doctor is because all humans have the right to life and all humans have the right to life equally. And size is an irrelevant issue in terms of who have or does not have rights. In the case of born and unborn, for instance, certainly there is a difference in size even between newborns and embryos, but the question is, does size difference really matter? What difference does it make if we have differences in size? I think that it is intuitive for us all that an infant does not have lesser rights than an adult man, simply because the infant is much smaller. If an adult man says the child is preventing him from exercising his right to pursue happiness, a born child is preventing him from exercising his right to pursue happiness, does that disqualify the born child from his right to life simply because the child is much smaller than the adult grown man is? I don't think so. So size is always irrelevant when it comes to the issue of human value. Size does not really matter in the face of human rights. But the second thing is the level of development, because there are people who say that a woman's right takes precedence over any rights that an unborn child may have, because a woman has relationships with other people and have a rich intellectual life with hopes and dreams for herself, and an accidental pregnancy will ruin those hopes and dreams. Firstly, I find it funny when people say that she got pregnant by accident, because majority of pregnancy, well, with the exception of pregnancy due to rape, are not accidental at all. When two consenting adults engage in sexual activity, even when they are contracepting, they should always be aware that there is a possibility of pregnancy no matter how small the probability is. So for two consenting adults engaging in sexual act, there is no accidental pregnancy. There's just no such thing. Anyway, Richard Dawkins has something to say about this particular issue. He says, quote, "An early embryo has the sentience as well as the semblance of a tadpole. A doctor is a grown-up, conscious being with hopes, loves, and aspiration," close quote. Well, yeah, the unborn cannot think or feel like an adult human being can, at least not at the same level. But why should the ability to think or feel at a certain level make someone a person? Why should the differences in the ability to think or feel become the determiner on whether or not a particular person or a particular group of persons have equal rights with other groups of persons, or another person? So I don't think that there is any significance in terms of determining who has human value, who has human dignity, and therefore who has human rights in terms of their level of rational or emotional capacity. Just because young people are young, just because fetus are very young, that does not mean that they do not deserve an equal right to life. After all, what difference does a level of development make? Human embryos are human beings that are even still in the process of developing into a human adult, and their level of development is not in any way relevant to the issue of human value. But then some would say that, and this now we're now going into the third part, they aren't in the world yet, so it's not wrong to abort them. That's their argument in terms of the differences in the environment between born and unborn human beings. This argument makes it seem like a woman's vagina is a portal to another dimension that is not of this world, and babies need to pass through that portal, the vagina, at least in normal deliveries, to be in this world. But living in a certain environment does not make someone a person. And no, this is not reducing women to a vessel that carries an unborn child. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not claiming that. I'm not using that as an argument. What I'm saying is that a woman's womb, her body, represents an intimate space that she shares with another human being, that is the fetus. And moving a human child from that intimate space of the womb to the outside environment does not make a significant difference in terms of the value of the child. Even the pro-choice philosopher Peter Singer admits that, quote, "Pro-life groups are right about one thing, according to a pro-choice philosopher. The location of the baby inside or outside the womb cannot make such a crucial moral difference," close quote. So even the pro-choice philosopher thinks that this argument does not really have weight, because the environment or the location of the baby, whether or not he's inside or outside the womb, cannot make such crucial moral difference in terms of the value of that human being. But pro-choice, pro-abortion people who uses the unborn are not persons arguments have one last argument. They would say that, well, at birth, it is not really the child's location that changes, but the fact that the woman's body is no longer needed by the child to survive. Well, firstly, this is not accurate, because viability moves as technology advances. Meaning, a fetus can survive outside a human's body several months before the traditional time of birth. In fact, in the United States of America, the viability is dated 24 weeks after conception. So meaning, it's not really a good argument to say that it is only at birth, at the traditional time of birth, that the woman's body is no longer needed. the woman can the child can be viable outside the woman's body 24 weeks after conception. But secondly, it is just not true that the woman's body is no longer needed by the newborn baby. In fact, if the mother if the mother leaves the baby alone, the baby would be dead in a matter of days. The unborn still requires assistance by an adult and hopefully by its parents, specifically the mother who, well, we all know that breastfeeding is still better than the other choices there are. But even so, the degree of dependency does not define a human being's value. We even put premature infants in incubators because they were prematurely delivered and is dependent to a sort of artificial womb or something that mimics the environment that a child can have inside a woman's womb to a certain extent. And if we believe that prematurely delivered infants have the right life and thus should be placed in an incubator because it cannot survive out of it, why can't we extend the same belief to unborn children who resides in natural wombs, that is the womb of the mother? So why can't we just say as well that those unborn children who cannot survive in outside that particular environment has the right to reside in the natural wombs? Moreover, the idea that the unborn are not persons simply because of their dependency is just opposite to our cultural intuition. And I even believe that there is something biological that runs under this cultural intuition that we have. In terms of this cultural intuition, we have this idea that crimes against adults are wrong. But these crimes, the same crimes that are done to adults, are worse when they are done against infants who are helpless and are dependent on the care of adults, normally the parents. Philosopher Trenthorn says, and I quote, if we consider it worse to harm an infant because he is so helpless, then wouldn't it be worse to kill a human being who is even more helpless than an infant, such as a fetus or an embryo? Close quote. His point is that the degree of dependency is not a relevant topic to the issue of human value. How independent you are does not determine your dignity as a human being and does not determine whether or not you have to be treated equally with other humans in terms of rights. So, those are the four things that pro-choice, pro-abortion people use to justify their idea that the differences between born and unborn human beings is sufficient reason to deprive the unborn humans the right to life. But the point is that if you are conversing with a pro-choice, pro-abortion person, then who uses these same arguments, then what you should do is to argue why those differences are not really significant reasons to say that there is a moral difference or there is a difference in the moral value of the life of an unborn and the life of a born human. So that's everything for the episode. I hope you learned something from this video. And if you learned something, please like and share this video. Also, if you can spare a little time, comment down below what you learned from this video. If you have any clarifications, questions, or rebuttals against the arguments I presented here, do not hesitate to comment or message us at our Facebook page, Apologia Davao. And lastly, I placed links in the description if you want to support and follow our organization's social media accounts. And if you want to become a part of the Association of Catholic Apologists Knights of St. Justin Martyr, you can message us directly at our Facebook page, Apologia Davao. We will respond to your message as soon as we can. So again, this is Sir Raven Jard Castañeda, co-founder and president of the Association of Catholic Apologists Knights of St. Justin Martyr. Thanks for watching and see you next time.